Hey, my name is Robert Duff. I am a clinical psychologist from Southern California, and I'm going to be reacting today to some more scenes from movies and TV shows having to do with therapy. You guys had a lot of really good feedback about the previous episode, so thank you for that. And today I'm going to be doing all suggestions that you guys had based on that. So I have five more clips of therapy to go through, and some of these I've seen, some of these I have not, so I'll just give my impressions about how it looks, what I think about the approach, everything like that. So let's get into it. The first one here is a clip from Breaking Bad, actually.
Would you tell me about patient confidentiality?
It's very straightforward. Without your permission, I can't disclose anything you tell me to anyone.
So I do remember this. It's been a very long time since I've seen this. I think this is an earlier episode of Breaking Bad. Actually, it looks like season 2, but it's been a while since I've seen it. And I believe Walter was, he kind of had a freak out, and so he wound up in the hospital. And so this is very typical of like a hospital setting. A lot of hospitals will have a social worker who comes and sees people for therapy or for planning of connecting them to resources for mental health, things of that sort. And this is very realistic in terms of how that might go. This would be obviously like a nicer hospital. He has a private room, they have space to talk. I've definitely done situations, I've done rotations in the ER when I was going through my training, where I would come and assess people to see, are they suicidal, what's going on, how did they end up in the hospital, things like that. And it wasn't always this nice. Sometimes it would be very crowded, maybe 2 people to a room. You don't have the privacy that you might like all the time. I would always advocate to try to get some space, either pull them into another room or have maybe the other person take a walk or something like that, just to establish some privacy. But this is a situation where they don't have to worry about that as much.
What about my family?
Not to your family, not to the police, not to anyone. The only exception would be if you threatened to kill someone. Then I'd be able to tell that person, but only that person.
So laws are different in different places, different states, the laws are different. So they're in, I think, New Mexico, right? If I'm remembering correctly. So I'm not sure how it works there. In California, there's this thing where if you threaten to hurt somebody, your duty as a psychologist or a therapist is to warn that person if you can, and also the authorities. So it's a little bit different than what they're saying here. Again, it varies regionally. In general, the limits of confidentiality are, if you talk about planning to hurt somebody else, if you talk about planning to hurt yourself, that's something that could cause hospitalization or some sort of follow-up. Also though, child abuse or elder abuse are things that can be reported. So if you talk about somebody harming a minor or somebody harming a senior in any sort of way, there are different specific rules for this as to what pertains, child abuse, especially when it comes to sex and things like that, what, qualifies as elder abuse. There are specific rules that we have to follow, but in general, plans to hurt yourself, plans to hurt somebody else, child abuse, elder abuse. So those are the things you need to look at. And with any of these things, it's not just a sort of blanket, we're going to report you to the authorities or hospitalize you. It's a conversation, it's an evaluation. It may not be able to be kept confidential is what we're trying to say when we say that.
And you, as a medical practitioner, you abide by these strictures absolutely?
Yes.
Or you lose your license.
All right. There was no fugue state.
A fugue state, what he's referring to is called a dissociative fugue. So that's something so dissociative disorders are a class of disorders where people essentially lose touch with reality. And in a dissociative fugue, it's really interesting. What you'll find is somebody winding up like in a different city or different country, having driven many miles, basically kind of started life over all of a sudden. And then they come out of it and have no recollection of how they got there, what happened. So it's a good alibi in this case for Walter, because it's a very bizarre situation. You'll find people who are living kind of normal day-to-day lives across the country, and their families have been looking for them, filing missing persons reports, things like that. eventually they come out of it and they have no idea how all that happened. So it's a very odd situation. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. It's been documented. You can look up some examples of it, but this is what he kind of pretended happened, but it didn't actually happen.
I remember everything. The truth is, I couldn't stand to spend another second in that house. I just had to get out. And so I left. I didn't think about it, I just did it. I walked for a long time, and when I couldn't walk anymore, I hitchhiked. I got as far as Gallup. Then it was just time to come home.
I like the approach that the therapist is taking here. I don't know if he's a psychiatrist or a therapist or psychologist or what, but he's sitting there listening calmly, which is appropriate. He educated him about the limits of confidentiality, which is very appropriate. You will do that at the start of treatment. And of course, if you come to a situation that may involve that, you may kind of reiterate that. I've done that plenty of times where someone's like, I want to talk about something, but I don't know if I should. I break it down for them, say, okay, look, here's the deal. These are the things that would cause me to have to break confidentiality. Doesn't mean you can't talk about them, but this is what they are. Basically putting it in their court so they have the information and they're not worried about, okay, I might accidentally, out myself or something like that. So I like that he talked about it beforehand. He's letting Walter get up and explore and look out the window. Nothing wrong with that. And he's just taking the information in. So I like his approach here.
So, being found naked in a supermarket, that was your way of giving credibility to a lie? Of avoiding questions about your disappearance? Why run away? What did you feel you had to run from?
That's another one of those stereotypical questions, kind of like how does that make you feel? What are you running from? That's a very stereotypical therapist question. Funny enough, when I was doing my first training as a psychologist, which was doing therapy in a school clinic with students who were there as kind of part of it wasn't a role play activity, but they were just supposed to talk about light, not heavy psychological issues, just kind of very basics, kind of getting down my listening skills and stuff like that. And there was a person that I worked with who was a runner and beat themselves up with running so much. And it was that question of, okay, what is it that you're running from that caused them to break down and really connect? So sometimes the stereotypical questions can be effective.
Doctor, my wife is 7 months pregnant with a baby we didn't intend. My 15-year-old son has cerebral palsy. I am an extremely overqualified high school chemistry teacher. When I can work, I make $43,700 per year. I have watched all of my colleagues and friends surpass me in every way imaginable, and within 18 months, I will be dead. And you ask why I ran?
That's a great scene. One thing that strikes me is that this would be somebody who it would be really important to have a conversation about suicide with. People who have chronic illnesses and who have life situations like he's describing are at high risk of suicide because, to be honest, there's a lot of good reasons to consider that as an option when there are very few other options. Everybody falls on a different part of the spectrum about your beliefs about someone's right to kill themselves or do what they want with their life. But at the very least, for your job in this setting, it would be important to touch base with him and see, okay, you had this big fake dissociative fugue. What's next? Are you planning on hurting yourself? What's going to happen here? So just having that conversation with him. If the person who was doing the therapy actually knew all that information already ahead of time, about him having the cancer and all the stuff that he listed off, then it kind of was a dumb question about what were you running from? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt though. So that's a pretty cool scene. Interesting. All right, so next up we have a scene from Good Will Hunting. I don't remember if I've seen this movie or not. And I know there's a whole lot more to it than what I'm going to be able to get in one scene. So forgive me in my ignorance if, like I'm not catching on to some really obvious stuff. I'm a little nervous about it because I know a big part of this is about therapy and stuff. So I'm just going to roll into it and see what happens.
You feel like you're alone, Will?
What?
Do you have a soulmate?
So notice the setting here. This is like a very academic looking setting. This could be in a university. He might be like a professor who also does a little bit of private practice work out of his office. I've certainly met people who do that. One of my advisors at school, when I was going through my graduate training, he did that. He would see people for therapy in his office at school sometimes. And so it kind of had a similar vibe, not as messy and disorganized. This is kind of the classic stereotypical professor look, right? Like he has his shirt that's probably not tucked in jacket, and the crazy hair and glasses and books all over the place. Much more like my advisor when I was in my pre-doc internship at a medical facility. His office was a lot like this. So it's kind of given a specific vibe. This is somebody who would not necessarily be really worried about the client gleaning information from their environment. Some people have a very sparse environment where they don't want to give a lot of information about themselves or have the client react to very much. He doesn't care about that. He's just here for the therapy itself.
Define that.
Somebody who challenges you.
Chucky.
No, Chucky's family. He'd lie down in fucking traffic for you. No, I'm talking about someone who opens up things for you, touches your soul.
I got.
Who?
I got plenty.
Well, name him.
So he's challenging him here. Obviously, this is a relationship where he's probably coming back into therapy because Robin Williams' character is one of the only people who will call his bullshit, and sometimes that's very important in therapy. Obviously, they have like he's matching him. He's swearing and using kind of a more casual approach, which you can use to get through to somebody sometimes. At a certain point, the work needs to get done. So if that's where you need to meet them, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, as long as you're still being appropriate and stuff like that.
Shakespeare, Nietzsche, Frost, O'Connor, Kant, Pope, Locke.
That's great. They're all dead.
Authors.
Not to me, then,
Well, you don't have a lot of dialogue with them. You can't give back to them, Will.
without some serious smelling salts and a heater.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You'll never have that kind of relationship in a world where you're always afraid to take the first step because all you see is every negative thing 10 miles down the road.
You gonna take the professor's side on
Don't
this?
give me a line of shit, no.
Look, I didn't want the job.
It's not about the job. I don't care if you work for the government. But you can do anything you want. You are bound by nothing. What are you passionate about? What do you want?
So this also sounds to me like a situation where they're pretty familiar with each other now, and the therapist they have a strong working alliance where the therapist is like invested in him and can sort of reach him as a person, not just as a client. And so he's kind of he's invested in his success and what he's doing with himself. And he's trying to communicate that to him to kind of break through. Again, a lot of times therapy is about breaking down whatever barriers are there, preventing the work itself from happening, and sometimes actually building a relationship with somebody where you can actually talk about the real stuff is part of the work, and that's a lot of it. So interesting.
I mean, there are guys who work their entire life laying brick so their kids have a chance at the opportunities you have here.
I didn't ask for this.
No, you were born with it, so don't cop out behind. I didn't ask for this.
What do you mean cop out? I mean, what's wrong with laying brick?
Nothing.
There's nothing wrong with it. That's somebody's home I'm building.
Right, my dad laid brick. Okay?
Self-disclosure. I know I'm interrupting this one a lot, but self-disclosure is another tool that you can use in therapy. People tend to be very conservative with that. Most training programs will tell you you don't need to disclose much about yourself unless it's necessary. And when you do make a self-disclosure, like my dad laid brick, one that I use a lot not a lot, but I have used in therapy is talking about, say if somebody was hospitalized, I'll talk about my experiences when my wife was hospitalized. She's given me permission to do that, and that's a good way of really connecting to their experience and comparing things, and that can be very useful. But whenever you make a self-disclosure, it's important to check in with yourself and say, who is this for? Am I disclosing this because I want to get it off my chest, because I want to relate? Or is this because it's going to be useful to this person in therapy?
Busted his ass so I can have an education.
Exactly. That's an honorable profession. What's wrong with fixing somebody's car? Someone will get to work the next day because of me. There's honor in that.
Yeah, there is. Well, there is honor in that. And there's honor in, you know, taking that 40-minute train ride so those college kids can come in the morning and the floors are clean and the wastebaskets are empty. That's real work.
That's right.
Right, and that's honorable. Sure, that's why you took that job. I mean, for the honor of it. I just have a little question here. You could be a janitor anywhere. Why did you work at the most prestigious technical college in the whole fucking world? Why did you sneak around at night and finish other people's formulas that only 1 or 2 people in the world could do and then lie about?
So he's being pretty pushy, pretty aggressive here. You know, this is, again, he's really challenging. He's really challenging him in this scene. It's kind of bordering on inappropriate, like, you know, there's a difference between calling someone out on their BS and like insulting them or, you know, whatever. But in a case where you have somebody who is intelligent, who is maybe a manipulative or tends to feel like they may even know a lot more than you in certain areas, they're going to test you, and you maybe need to not back down from that and need to push a little bit more, as in this case. He's on that borderline though.
Because I don't see a lot of honor in that, Will.
This is
What do
more
you
of a
really wanna
conversation right now than a therapy session. Coaching, kind of.
I want to be a shepherd.
Really?
I want to move up to Nashua, get a nice little spread, get some sheep, and tend to them.
Maybe you should go do that.
What?
You know, if you're gonna jerk off, why don't you just do it at home with a moist towel?
You chucking me?
Yeah, get the fuck
Hey,
out.
no. Time's not up yet.
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
not leaving, no.
Listen, you're not gonna answer my questions. You're wasting my fucking time.
What? I thought we were friends. What do you mean you...
Playtime's over, okay?
Well, why are you kicking me out, Sean? I mean, what? I mean, you're lecturing me on life? Look at you fucking burnout.
There
What
it
winds
is.
your clock?
Working with you.
Where's your soulmate? You want to talk about soulmates? Where is she?
Dead.
That's right, she's fucking dead. She fucking dies, and you just cash in your chips and you walk away?
Hey, at least I played a hand.
Oh, and you...
This is getting, so now that we're in movie territory, this is way too personal for inappropriate therapeutic intervention. The getting up and walking out kind of thing, that, you know, you might be able to use that, especially with like adolescents or people where you really need to, again, break through those barriers, call that BS, do that sort of thing. But like getting, you want to avoid getting heated. You know, you want to avoid letting this person, you know, really rile you up. And he's calm, but, you know, they're snippy with each other. And so there's more of a personal relationship here going on than you might like for an appropriate therapeutic relationship.
You played a hand and you lost. You lost a big fucking hand, and some people will lose a big hand like that and have the sack to ante up again.
Look at me. What do you want to do? You and your bullshit. You got a bullshit answer for everybody. But I ask you a very simple question, and you can't give me a straight answer. Because you don't know. See you, Bo Peep.
So that's probably good for that. He, you know, again, this has become more of a mentor and friend role. He thinks that he can reach him perhaps through these ways, and maybe he can. Maybe this is exactly what he needs. It's not appropriate as therapy if we're approaching it from that perspective, just based on what they're doing there. Really cool scene though, and fantastic acting from both of them, obviously. All right, so next scene we're going to do is from The Departed. Again, these movies, I don't remember if I've seen this one or not. This is one a lot of you guys suggested, so I'm going to check it out and just, you know, give an honest reaction to it. I haven't pre-screened these, so hopefully we picked out a good scene here. If I didn't, let me know if there's a specific scene or something you want me to react to. Let me know and I could find it. But let's see what this is like.
What do you expect coming in here?
I have to come here.
I know you have to come here, but now that you're here.
So again, as we talked about in the previous React episode, we have a table between them. So they're trying to set up a power dynamic. This is obviously somebody's office. They're busy, they got stuff going on. There's files in the background that you can see. So obviously what they're saying is, you are one person of many people that I got to see today. What's your deal? Let's get the work done here. This is very characteristic of somebody who might be in a mandatory treatment setting, or somebody who's doing EAP, so Employee Assistance Program. So a therapist who works for the company that you work for, and you're required to see them, or you want to see them for some issue and you're doing it through work. So, we're just setting up the kind of stage here.
What do you want?
You want the truth?
You can't handle the truth.
Valium.
You know, if you lied, you would have an easier time getting what you wanted.
What's that say about what you do for a
I just
living?
think we should have a few more meetings before we even talk about prescriptions.
Look.
So this tells me that they're a psychiatrist. So he's on Valium, which is a sedative medication for anxiety, something you could take in an emergency to bring you down. They'd probably give it to you for dental surgery or flying, that sort of thing. That's what he's wanting out of this. He's being honest about it, which is good. But so she's a psychiatrist. She can prescribe that medication. A psychologist, PhDs, not MDs, we can't do that, at least in most places.
Look, I'm having panic attacks, all right? The other night I thought I was having a fucking heart attack. I puked in a trash barrel on the way over here. I haven't slept for fucking weeks.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true, all right? I said something fucking true. I want some fucking pills, and you're gonna what? You're gonna close my file?
I didn't
Is that
mean
what
to
you're
close
gonna
your
do?
file. I know.
See, you kind of can really underestimate like how perceptive people are on the other side of the room, on the other side of the desk, as it were. But he sees, she folds up his file, puts it away. That's some body language right there. And as much as I am not a huge stickler for body language, again, I don't think you need to be, wide open and accepting and really overinterpret the body language. There's nothing wrong with having arms crossed or anything like that. But when you're closing someone's file, turning away from them, things like that, you're clearly sending a message.
I thought I was supposed to tell the truth here,
You
if
are.
only fucking
You
here.
are,
Christ,
yes.
I mean, a guy comes
You
in here
are.
against every instinct of privacy, of self-reliance that he has, and what do you do? What do you do, huh? You send him off on the street to score smack? Is that what you do? You're fucking ridiculous.
Okay, what now? That's what she's saying. Here, you got
2
it.
pills? Great. Why don't you just give me a bottle of scotch and a handgun to blow my fucking head off? Are we done here with...
That requires additional assessment, right? When someone says something like that, unless you know absolutely that they're joking, like, some people that I work with who have like brain injuries, they can't keep themselves serious at all because of their brain injury, and they'll say stuff like that all the time as a joke. This person is saying, give me a bottle of booze and a handgun and blow my brains out. You're going to want to assess a little bit more there. Like, are we actually talking about this? Are you there? Do we need to do something about this here? If I don't give you these drugs, are you going to go kill yourself? Like, what's the deal?
this psychiatry bullshit?
what? You can
What the
leave.
fuck did I just put myself through? I'm fucking out of here. Hey, what if that was a legitimate threat? Think about it, fucking hotshot.
Yeah, he's not wrong. And she's pissed. Now look, we're human. You know, all mental health professionals are human. We can get upset. We can get heated sometimes. We all have things that we wish we could undo in therapy. That is a lot, right? Get the fuck out of my office, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know if they have a personal relationship aside from this, you know, this therapy here that they're trying to do, or this appointment they're trying to do. It's not appropriate though. You know, this is somebody that you would not expect to see again. And you could, in this day and age, interestingly, you know, you have to be worried about things like, this shouldn't govern the work that you do, but, you know, a person like that who goes on Google or Yelp and says, this therapist told me to get the fuck out of their office, you're never going to see another client again if they look, right? So not exactly the most appropriate thing. It's a movie. We got to take it with a grain of salt. Was that a prescription that she just wrote?
Why is the last patient of the day always the hardest one?
It's because you're tired and you don't give a shit. It's not supernatural.
Listen, listen.
You don't chase your clients out like this. I mean, you can, like, certainly I have before, like, wait, hold on, you know, get them in the waiting room or chase them out to their car because I forgot something or I want to address something. But you don't do it out here. You bring them back into the office, bring it to a place where it's private and, you know, you don't have confidentiality issues like you do in this scene right here. you don't just run out and give someone a script in the middle of the street.
You know, I'm not just somebody that you have to see or they put you in jail. Okay?
It's a mandatory
I mean, if
treatment
you're in
then.
distress, I will help you.
What's this?
It's my card and a prescription for 20 lorazepam.
Yeah? Is it enough to commit suicide?
Maybe it is. All right? Okay? Have I done my job up to your goddamn standards? Because according to my standards, you fit the model of drug-seeking behavior. You know,
If that's true, she shouldn't be doing it. You know, if she truly thinks that he's just drug seeking, if she thinks there's any chance he's going to kill himself, the work here is not done. And even if she can't get through to him or manage things appropriately, she would need to call a crisis intervention team or get somebody else to help out, because you can't just do that.
I'm too damn bad if you don't like my initial clinical reaction.
Thank you.
I'm transferring you to another counselor.
He's going to say no,
Good.
huh?
Okay.
Huh?
So you want to get a cup of coffee?
Get out of here. You can't do that. So that's another thing. Even if, say you really, had the hots for your therapist, you had a really, really genuine connection with them, which does happen. I mean, you're bearing your soul to somebody, feelings come out. You can't start a relationship with them if you just immediately stop therapy. You can, in some cases, have a relationship with a past therapist. There's a certain amount of time that needs to have passed. This is according to the ethical code for at least psychologists. Again, it may be different for other professions. A certain amount of time must have passed, and you need to be able to prove that it's not something that's exploitative, because there's inherently going to be sort of an influence power dynamic there, because you were in a position of, I don't want to say power, but at least influence over them, and it can be really, really fishy. So very, 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 very rare for this to be okay. So the default has got to be absolutely not. No, that's beyond the boundaries of this relationship, etc. So interesting scene there. Definitely not the most realistic portrayal of therapy by a psychiatrist or a psychologist that we've seen so far. All right, next one we got is from a show called In Treatment. I have not seen this. I've heard really good things about it. And a lot of people have suggested that I react to it. So this is a scene with somebody named Walter, I suppose. I just looked up clips from In Treatment, so it looks like there are a bunch of different recurring characters. I didn't watch all of them, but I see names, Walter, whoever, and so people, kind of continue to have sessions on different episodes, I suppose. So I'm not sure if this is beginning, middle, end, whatever with Walter, but let's check it out.
You're angry at yourself for crumbling under this pressure, but I'm really amazed that you've held everything together for as long as you did.
Thanks.
That is so very rich in just that one statement. So this is he is making a kind of a claim about this person. So he's making an interpretation of this guy's behavior. He's saying, reflecting it back to him, saying, "You're feeling this way," and that's his interpretation of things. And it's also a positive reframe. He's saying, this, but I'm impressed by this. So he's trying to kind of confront him with a different way of looking at it to see how he reacts.
Go on.
The Walter you know has been on the front line since his brother died. On call, taking care of everything, everybody, sleeping with one eye open. But without a mountain of responsibility, that
More
Walter is
interpretation,
completely lost.
appropriate.
He doesn't know how not to be in charge. He's forgotten how to play. He can't just sit and be.
I don't know if he's using the front line sort of as a metaphor, or if this person actually has any like combat experience or anything like that. But you take the situation of somebody who is at war, literally, right? They're a soldier and they're out on the front lines for an extended period of time. They come back, try to reacclimate to normal society. It generates some difficulty for them many times. A lot of people get PTSD and have a hard time adjusting to that. Very much the same thing can happen for the emotional battle that you have. If you're on high alert for some emotional reasons, say you're in an abusive relationship, or you live in a place that's just very unstable, what have you, you being on those front lines for a very long time can have the same sort of effect, where now that that's gone, what the hell do you do with yourself? So this is really cool stuff.
Maybe that's why you're climbing the walls at the hospital.
Well, then get me out of there.
And if I did, what would happen to the
So
other
this guy's
Walter?
currently hospitalized.
What are you talking about?
The Walter you said you didn't know existed. The little boy who had his childhood taken away from him when he was 6 years old. He's been sitting there all this time in the dark, scared half to death, hoping that somebody would notice him.
He's continuing to talk because he can see the gears turning. Sometimes it's appropriate to give space, let the person react. Sometimes you're hitting something and you can kind of cold read it and continue a bit because they're kind of doing deep work here. Maybe they've had a few sessions already and they're working towards some insight into, how these things came to be. And he's talking about kind of the different elements of this person, this person's psyche and persona. And he's looking to integrate those rather than having two separate things. And he's saying, okay, well, what's going to happen to the little boy inside you that's never had a chance to develop, which may be very thought-provoking and interesting for this person.
Maybe comfort him. And maybe this is his chance. Your chance. To find out who that boy is. To reconnect with a part of yourself that you've had to deny your entire life.
It's heavy stuff.
Am I making any sense to you?
You want me to connect to that part of myself that fell apart, that crumbled under pressure?
When you go through hard stuff, you develop your own way of getting through it. You may have coping strategies that are not ideal, but they get you through, they keep you safe. For a lot of people, that's where anxiety comes from. The anxiety kept them aware, kept them hypervigilant when they needed to keep themselves safe. But then that overstays its welcome. Later on, when those threats are no longer there, you still have those adaptations that are getting you into trouble. And so it can seem like a big risk for him to connect to this person who wasn't up to the task of dealing with all the threats that were in his environment. And so this is sort of just something that he had never considered because he's been in the thick of it for so long.
Why would I do that?
Because, Walter, I don't think that's the part of you that crumbled. I think that's the part of
So
you that
dramatic.
wants to live.
It's good stuff, but it's just so dramatic with the music and the way they're saying it. You hit a chord, though. It's okay. It's good. Crying is good in therapy. It's a safe place to do it. That means that you're breaking through a barrier. This person's getting maybe a little bit of you're hitting a chord. They're getting some catharsis out of it. Like maybe this is him grieving that. It's grieving the loss of that person inside him that was never able to develop. And so this is good stuff. All totally, pretty realistic. I can see, he has a wristband on there. Somebody who's hospitalized and seeing the therapist or psychiatrist as part of the treatment for that. And so this is probably a bit deeper than you would realistically get in a hospitalization setting. Usually that's much more about kind of stabilizing you, setting you up with the plan to move forward and getting you out the door. But obviously for the show, for the dramatic purposes, they're going to be getting deeper and all of that stuff. So really good scene. I like that. Okay, so last scene we're going to do here is from Silver Linings Playbook, and this is a movie that I do remember and I really like. This is, for me, I really enjoyed that it was one of the more accurate portrayals of mental illness, so things like bipolar, OCD, really, really good accurate portrayal of those things, so I have to imagine that they enlisted the help of some psychologists to help flesh out the characters and look over the scenes, which is great. I don't remember much about this therapy scene in particular. This is him seeing his therapist and describing apparently a cheating incident.
What's hers?
What's hers?
Mm-hmm.
Are you joking?
One thing you'll note, the way that they're kind of sitting in a side-by-side, like slightly facing each other scenario. Very collaborative, right? They're not across the table from each other. They're sort of having a conversation rather than being lectured about something. He's got a very interested sort of kind of scholarly posture, but this is all looking good and appropriate.
Well, let's go back to the incident. I come home from work after I left early, which I never do, by the way, but I got in a fight with Nancy, the high school principal. I come home, and what's playing but the song from my wedding? The song that you so charmingly played out here today for us. That's playing, and I don't think anything of it, which is odd, because I should have. I come home, what do I see? I walk in the door, and I see underwear and pieces of clothing and a guy's pants with his belt in it, and I walk up the stairs, and all of a sudden I see the DVD player, and on the DVD player is the CD, and it's playing the wedding song, and then I look down, and I see my wife's panties on the ground, and then I look up, and I see her naked in the shower, and I think, oh, that's kind of sweet, she's in the shower, what a perfect thing, I'm gonna find her, and maybe I'll go in there, we never fuck in the shower anymore, maybe today we will. I pull the curtain back, and there's the fucking history teacher with tenure. And you know what he says to me? You should probably go. That's what he says to me.
Oh, man.
So
throughout that story, you'll notice he has pressured speech, which means he's talking really fast. The thoughts are coming so quick that he needs to talk really fast to get them all out. That could be characteristic of a variety of things. Sometimes people do that naturally when they're stressed. People who have bipolar tend to do that when they're manic. There's a variety of things that can cause pressured speech, but that's something that you'll want to look out for. The therapist is just listening, remaining calm during this time, which is good.
So yeah, I snapped. I almost beat him to death. But then I get fucking chastised for it. I get that I'm parallel to my father. I don't think so.
All right. Can you talk about something that you did before or after?
Yeah, about a week before the incident.
Not sure why he said that. Can you talk about something that you did before or after? Maybe he's asking about sort of antecedent behavior, like what came before that triggered that. I mean, the situation's pretty damn clear as to what he's talking about. My guess is the therapist is sick of him talking about the same thing over and over again, so he's just trying to get him to talk about something else.
And I called the cops, and I told them that my wife and the history guy were plotting against me by embezzling money from the local high school, which...
Delusion?
Wasn't true, it was a delusion.
A delusion is, so you have hallucinations and delusions. Those are part of psychotic disorders. These are psychotic symptoms. So a hallucination is seeing something that's not accurate, that's not there. Delusion is a strong belief in something that's not true. So a delusion of grandeur, thinking you're somebody very, very important when you're not. Delusion of persecution, people are out to get you. Paranoia, things like that. So he's saying a delusion.
And we later found out from the hospital that's because I'm,
Undiagnosed bipolar.
Yeah.
If the hospital told you
swings and
you're not
weird things
undiagnosed,
brought on by
you're
severe
diagnosed.
stress, which rarely happens, thank God.
That can happen with bipolar, with other mood disorders like depression. When you get to the severe end of the spectrum, you can get these psychotic symptoms that happen. So that sounds entirely plausible.
And then the shower incident happened, and that's when everything snapped. So I then realized that, oh wow, you know, I've been dealing with this my whole life, and without any supervision.
Okay, cool. So good scene, you know, talking about bipolar, how that can generate kind of psychotic symptoms like delusions, and then, you know, just going through and seeing his extreme reaction to the situation as part of that. So thank you for watching. These were some really interesting scenes. If you want me to react to other scenes or movies or episodes or anything in the media from a psychologist perspective, please let me know in the comments. I'm happy to do these videos. They're fun for me. So let me know what you think and what you'd like me to react to, and have a really, really good day. Bye.